Now, designing something in any 3D CAD program is very, very different than it is with most of the other drawing programs a student has used by the time they got to the 7th grade. In that things like Adobe Illustrator or Microsoft Word or some of those drawing programs, PowerPoint maybe, all work in 3 dimensions. In 2 dimensions. Drawing in 3 dimensions is quite different, and it kind of takes a different way of thinking about your drawing as you do this. And I want to show you some basic tools that, if you know how to use these tools and understand what they do, will really, really help you think and draw in 3 dimensions. So this is the template that we picked, the 3D printing template in inches. And the first tool I want to show you, first of all, let's call attention to the fact that we are in 3 dimensions, and in 3 dimensions, if you remember from your X, Y coordinate plane days, that's in 2 dimensions, so this would be the X plane, X axis, sorry, the Y axis, and this one here comes into play when we get into 3 dimensions. This is known as the Z axis. So this is the X axis, the Y axis, and the Z axis. Well, if we're designing something in 3 dimensions, then we need to be able to look around at all sides of the object that we are designing. We do that with this function right here. It's called orbit. Now I'm going to click on orbit, and when I come over here to where my template is, you see I'm moving the orbit around and nothing's happening. However, if I hold down my mouse key and then start moving my mouse, you see my 3-dimensional template starts moving around. Because if you're designing something in 3 dimensions, you need to see the top, the bottom, the right, left, the back, the front. You need to be able to see all 3 sides of it. Let me give you a simple example, and I'm not going to really explain what I'm doing here right now. We'll definitely get to that in a few seconds, but I'll show you what I mean by being able to orbit around a 3-dimensional object. I'm going to draw a very simple shape here, just very quickly. Don't worry about what I'm doing, but I have a 3-dimensional shape now. I could actually print this on a 3D printer, and it would print out something that is actually very simple shape, nothing too exciting about it. But let's go back to this orbit command. What can I do? I click on the orbit command. Now I hold down the mouse. I'm now looking at all the different sides, even underneath. Because when you're doing something in 3 dimensions, you need to be able to see all the different sides of the object. That's how the orbit tool works. Now, as another tool, isn't necessarily specific to 3D drawing, but is called the ruler tool. The ruler tool, as it states, as you can imagine, they call it a tape measure. That's what a carpenter would call it. I have a lot of tape measures. But it just simply allows you to measure something. So if I click from one place and then click on another place, it'll tell me down in this length box here exactly how long it is, that object that I just measured. Now this is an important point that sometimes I forget. Make sure you are running SketchUp in full screen mode, like that. If you don't, sometimes these very useful boxes down at the bottom don't appear. Let's go ahead and take some measurements. I'm measuring from this corner to that corner. It says 9.8 inches. I'm measuring from here to here, 5.9 inches. And let's say I'm measuring the depth of this as well, 6.3 inches. Now, remember, this is the X plane, the Y plane. And what do we call here where those, the x-plane, y-plane, and z-plane all intersect? Well, right here is where it's called the origin. So right here, your coordinates would be 0, 0. It's a really good idea whenever you're drawing things in SketchUp to always draw them in reference to the origin. After you draw them, you can move them later. But it's easier, much easier to draw them from the origin. And again, I'm not going to explain exactly what it is I'm doing here. We'll get into some more of that later. But I just want to demonstrate what it is we can do here. Select this object. And now I can move it around. Okay? So let's not worry about that right now. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this cube that I drew. I just wanted to show you some few tools, the orbit tool, the measuring tool. Remember, this is the origin. Now, you notice this was like 9.8 inches, this was about 6 inches, etc. The print bed on our printers, this is actually for a MakerBot 3D printer. We have a different 3D printer. Our print bed is only about 5 inches by 5 inches. So we want to do, we're only concerned about right in this area, about 5 inches from 5 inches out from the origin. Now you can zoom in and zoom out. You can't see me do this, but what I'm doing, if I scroll in with my, scroll up, with the scroll bar on my mouse, I zoom in. I scroll down, I zoom out. So let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Now this is probably about the size of the print bed on our print. It's still bigger, but that's about the right size. The other very helpful function here is this little hand. They call it the pan. And what it allows you to do is it really just allows you to kind of slide your view to the left or the right. As I'm moving it around, I'm not holding down the mouse button. But as soon as I hold down the mouse button, I can slide my view around. Imagine like it's a piece of paper on the table and it's gotten a little bit too far away from you and you want to move it closer to draw on. So what I'd like you to do, I'm going to suggest in just a second that you pause the video and you practice with the zooming, the orbit, and the pan to get comfortable. Because the way you move the mouse to get it to do all of these things is pretty different than what other tools you may have used. So the orbit tool, I'm holding the mouse down. As soon as I let go of the mouse button, it stops orbiting. The zooming tool is done with the scroll key on the top of the mouse. Scroll in to zoom in, scroll down to zoom out. And the pan key, this hand, once I start holding down the mouse button, it allows me to turn this all around, move it from side to side like a piece of paper. And what I would want you to do when you're done practicing with these three tools, I want you to have a view that looks something kind of like that. That's going to be a good space for us to work in when we start working on our keychain. See if you can use those tools to get a space that looks something about like that. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video, practice it a little bit, and then you'll continue on the video when you feel comfortable with those three tools. They're kind of fun to play with too.